The first time I'm right about a prediction, and it had to be about this. Well, we'll talk about that, what we're hoping for in Comic-Con, and a lot more on today's episode of the Geek Watch Podcast.
This is the Geek Watch Podcast with Brian Hatcher and Mandy Petry.
Greetings, Geek Watchers, and welcome to episode 221 of the Geek Watch Podcast. I'm Brian Hatcher, and with me, as always, Geek Watch's own resident geek goddess, Mandy Petry.
Hello, Brian.
This is a big news week, and we're going to talk about a lot of news. I want to start out, first of all, they finally released the big full trailer for the new Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga, which we've both seen. What was your first impressions when you saw it?
I still haven't watched the first Joker. I just, I'm not against seeing it. I just haven't yet. So kind of going into it blind, it's still, I would never say, this looks like a comic book movie. This is very heavy drama and like the imagery, and it feels just like a gritty 70s thriller.
There's definitely a lot of. And obviously the first Joker movie was very polarizing, and this was, I believe that was the last film that I saw before COVID hit.
Oh.
It is a very polarizing movie. You either like it or you don't. And most of the people who don't like it, who are comic book fans, are like, well, that's nothing like what the comic books, like, that's not what this was.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Well, some people think it is okay. Some people not so much. I was able to appreciate it for what it was. I understand why, if you're looking for a certain type of portrayal of the Joker, this isn't it. And I can understand why some people would say, well, look, if you're not going to do the Joker, just call it something else. But I really enjoyed what it was trying to do. I understand that I wasn't going to get the comic book Joker. I was going to get a different story. I was able basically to separate myself from any expectations I might have had from reading the comics. And I knew that going into it, fortunately for me. So I really enjoyed it. I'm a big fan of Taxi Driver. I remember the King of Comedy. There was a lot of references, and you could tell there was a love of that. It's a real, like a 70s kind of hard-boiled, gritty kind of story, which I appreciate because we haven't seen a lot of those, and we're now getting a chance to see something like that. And yeah, I get it. It's not the Joker, or at least the one that we're used to, but I enjoyed the movie for what it was. This one is going to be a little bit different because my understanding is this movie is a musical, and there's some
I've heard that too, and we did see the singing.
Yeah, although it didn't really beat you over the head with the idea that there's going to be a bunch of musical numbers, which honestly makes sense for this movie because one of the things about the original movie, and I don't feel like this is a spoiler to say
and
this.
I don't care about spoilers.
But it's very difficult to tell what's real in the movie and what isn't because you have...
They're going with kind of the Chicago approach, I think. Like they're imagining this happening. And what I can tell from it is it's a jukebox musical. So everyone's going to know these songs already. And we're just going to see them in a new light, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I would say also, as far as the first movie, of course, we have this unreliable narrator, Arthur Fleck. And you can tell there's certain times where he just goes into a fugue state and imagines things that didn't happen. And sometimes they indicate when that's happened, and sometimes they don't. And so there's a real argument to be had about, okay, what did he actually do and what actually happened as compared to what he may have imagined happened. And so there is a lot of that unreliable narrator. And so you don't know for sure. And that, too, I think is a reason why some people didn't like it. Because it's like, just give me a straight narrative that actually has the Joker and we get to see Batman. Well, that's a different movie. Right. So I'm going to be interested to see what they do with it. But I did want to mention from the time of recording, because we're recording on Wednesday, we are less than a day away from Deadpool Wolverine.
That's right.
And I've made this joke about other things. As far as spoilers are concerned, I have dodged more bullets than they have in The Matrix. I don't know anything going in. I know less than I think a lot of people probably do. And that's the way I wanted it. As soon as we're done with the podcast, the internet is going off. I am not watching any videos. I am not going online. I am having basically a media blackout because I want to.
Off the grid.
Yeah, I'm going to stay off the grid because I just want to make absolutely sure I don't see anything.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that today, with the start of Comic-Con, they're going to be doing a Deadpool Wolverine appreciation panel. And that's going to be what they use to kick off, of course, the showing next week. And I'm sure we're definitely going to be talking about it. Do you have any plans of seeing it?
I am not certain. My sister's coming in this weekend, so maybe I can talk her into it. So we'll see.
My question for myself, because I haven't decided this yet, is do I see it here? Do I drive to Columbus to see it in IMAX? Or do I drive to Columbus to see it in 3D IMAX?
It's a lot of choices.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to see it in 3D IMAX.
Flanny, it'll be.
So I haven't decided yet. I'm sure that's going to depend upon what we get through this weekend. If anything comes up that I need to deal with that I can't make the drive, but I'm definitely going to watch it, and we will definitely talk about it. There's a lot of news whipping around right now, a lot of speculation. What are we going to see at Comic-Con? There have been some announcements for panels. Marvel's coming back to Hall H for the first time in a while.
Wow.
There's no telling what they're going to talk about. I don't know if they're going to talk about Blade, but I'm curious if they do because the news hasn't been good. Well, how many times have they've had to get rid of a writer? It's gone through 2 directors at this point. And certainly Deadpool Wolverine is going to be a reflection of what we're going to get in Blade, because if Marvel can put out an R-rated movie and it does well, we can get an R-rated Blade, which I just honestly don't see the point of a PG-13 Blade. I just don't. They're going to need to start production soon because you're going to lose your star. You can't wait forever. It's not like there aren't other jobs out there.
Right. Yeah.
Either they're going to need to get going on this soon, or they just need to put it to bed and stop talking about it because it's just not going to happen. But they may wind up talking about it. But there are a lot of panels that are going to be coming out. Saturday, they're going to have a Doctor Who panel. I don't know if Shooty Gott was going to be a part of it because I know he's in the middle of a play right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll be able to make a little bit of time for it. And I also hope that they get to talk a little bit about season 2 and what they're going to be doing in season 2. But since we're talking about Doctor Who, let's talk about Doctor Who. And I know this sounds like I hate Doctor Who because it seems like I've done nothing but complain about it for the last few podcasts.
A lot.
So now it's time for somebody else to complain about Doctor Who, and that's Deadline Hollywood, who this week put out an article in their magazine about the relationship of Doctor Who with Disney Plus and all the questions that are in the air right now as far as the future of the program, which I had a feeling this was going to happen. I predicted that there could be issues between Disney and Doctor Who, and why did I have to be right about this? Why couldn't I be right about Sheriff Rick being carried off by a helicopter? I couldn't. I'm the curmudgeon. I make all the nasty predictions, and I'm happy when most of them are wrong, but unfortunately it looks like this one's going to be different. Now, of course, Deadline Hollywood is hardly a hack newspaper. They don't tend to write on speculation, although I haven't had a chance to read the article fully. It does feel that there may have been some opinion in it.
Okay.
I think maybe the author put a little bit more of themselves in there than perhaps they should have.
Okay.
And
if they're not necessarily a fan of Doctor Who, then...
Or at least they feel like this last season didn't measure up. And as you can imagine, there are certain people that are more than happy for Doctor Who to get booted off of Disney Plus, which I'm not saying that's going to happen. But according to the article, Disney's view of Doctor Who was that the ratings were okay, but they weren't stellar. Now, what we do know is that Doctor Who placed 7th in streaming among the entirety of their properties, which included The Simpsons, which includes Star Wars.
That's still like 7th in the Olympics. That's still way up there.
Yeah, it ain't a medal, but when you think about how much...
They've got 5-year-olds who watch Moana 15 times a day.
Right.
So...
Yeah. From the surface, it doesn't seem like this should be a problem. But again, and I was worried about this, but of course, Disney right now, they're just on edge about a bunch of things. So they want everything to be to the moon. And Doctor Who wasn't quite that. The ratings, they didn't have the number 1 show or the number 3 show or 5 show. It's the number 7 show. But there were a few things that did happen that they were upset about that I can understand. For example, on BBC iPlayer, they had these behind-the-scenes shows for Doctor Who. Each episode, I don't know if you remember back in the day, and this was, of course, during the David Tennant era, they had Doctor Who Confidential.
Yes, I do remember Doctor Who Confidential.
Yes, they brought it back as Doctor Who Unleashed. So each of the episodes, they have a behind-the-scenes.
Excellent.
Yeah, on iPlayer, they have them.
But not on Disney Plus.
Yeah, Disney Plus doesn't get them. And so they were like, wait a minute, didn't we just pay you for Doctor Who content?
Why are we not getting it?
And the other thing that's been a problem has been Comic-Con. Because during the last Doctor Who Confidential that was for the season finale, they showed a couple of minutes of footage from the next season of Doctor Who, which would have been, as Disney said to them, we're paying all this money for you to go to Comic-Con. Maybe that would have been the place to put it and not on a streaming platform for Great Britain that Americans don't even get a chance to see. And some things, Disney's being really picky. I think this whole idea of they're not happy about the ratings, I think is pushing things a little bit. And I'm not thinking they should be all really that upset about the Doctor Who Unleashed. I can understand a little bit the issue with the
But Disney
footage.
gets mad when preschools paint Mickey on their walls. So
Yeah, they do. And
they send out
apparently,
cease and desist letters for stuff like that.
yeah, and the BBC, I know, has been targeting a bunch of YouTube channels that have been doing reviews of Doctor Who and doing takedowns for copyright infringement. And as an aside, let me just say really quickly, any studio that's going after YouTube channels that are doing reactions of like trailers or doing reviews of your show, who are basically giving you free advertisement for your show, you might want to leave them alone.
Yeah.
They're helping you. I have never understood why anyone should get a takedown for doing a reaction for a trailer. It's your ad, for Pete's sake. It's not like they're revealing anything you hadn't revealed for free yourself.
Right.
They're reacting to the trailer. They're getting people excited about the trailer. Why would you ever? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. But I'm hoping some marketing department will extract their head from
I don't think you understand how influencers work. Influencers are important now.
And especially if you're talking about a channel that gets 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million views. Why would you not want your trailer in front of all those people? In front of somebody that's like, oh, this looks cool. It doesn't make any sense to me. But again, a lot of these marketers are old school, and I don't know what they think is going on here. But showing your trailer on another channel is not a bad thing in any sense of the word.
As you've said before, even a hate view is still a view.
Yeah. And a hate view can get people going into your movie to see it. But I do understand a little bit as to Disney thinking if you've got a teaser for the next season, that would be something you want to save for Comic-Con. But this has been, to my mind, the clash of the BBC versus Disney and the way they do things differently. Because Disney, they care about the American audience and the BBC cares about the British audience.
Surprise.
Yeah, it makes no... Yeah, why would they be that way? You can understand that. Which is why the BBC, with their own money, have been putting out these Unleashed, and they've been doing Tales of the TARDIS. I can see why you'd want to do that, because it does feel in many cases that Doctor Who's being taken over by Disney. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I still feel really weird when I turn on Disney Plus and I'm watching an episode of this season of Doctor Who, and they call it a Disney Plus original. Dude, you've missed that by about over 60 years at this point, okay?
Yeah, but you put that Mickey Mouse money on it, and they're like,
Yeah.
this is ours. This is mine. This is mine.
And I'm going to ask you this.
Okay.
You've seen this last season of Doctor Who.
Yes.
Does the Mickey Mouse money show up there?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely. I talked about the bottle episode.
Yeah.
Before, a bottle episode was one room and people talking scarily, and it was very effective. Of course, I'm talking about the episode. I'm sorry, I forget what it's called, but the Doctor is in a train and they're going to see a diamond waterfall, and then a spooky ghost. Midnight. Yeah, a spooky ghost gets into the ship, and they're all talking weird. That was the bottle episode. In this season, we get a bottle episode. The Doctor stands still the whole time, but all these fantastic robots and holograms and all these great things happen around him. You know, it's in one location, but all of these other great things. Of course, this Mickey Mouse money shows through.
Yeah.
The TARDIS. Look at the inside of the TARDIS. It's huge.
Yeah, for sure.
It's bigger on the inside than it ever has been.
Yeah. And instead of doing a green screen, they had this big honking television so that the actors could actually see what the set looks like, what they were marveling at. So yeah, the money definitely comes into play. Could they have made that episode without Disney money? Well, they've made episodes similar to that in the past. So yeah, would it have been as cool? Maybe not. But now we get to this question. How important is the Disney money? Because the BBC could just go back to doing things the way they used to. Obviously, it's going to sting if Doctor Who is on 2 seasons and gets kicked to the curb. I think the show will survive that. But again, there's like all the speculation going on right now about Disney. Of course, a lot of people have decided to introduce their own narratives into this for no apparent reason than to justify basically an unjustifiable viewpoint about why they think that their personal philosophy not being followed on Doctor Who has been the destruction of the entire show.
Just like the Star Wars fanboys.
Yeah, because the Acolyte's getting torn up. And it's not doing well, admittedly. And a lot of people have been complaining about the ending because they don't believe it makes a whole lot of sense. But there's a difference between talking about an ending that doesn't work for you as compared to a bunch of other political stuff that has nothing to do with what's going on, except that it seems like politics has everything to do with what's going on right now with everything, everywhere, all at once. But the truth is, as far as Doctor Who, my issues have, and for the 3rd week now, and possibly for the 4th week, because there's going to be a panel Saturday, and we're going to definitely have to talk about what they talk about in the panel.
Yeah.
But I'll be glad to put this to rest. But it just seems like, again, my issues with Doctor Who have been the writing. My concerns with the writing. And my concerns basically with the fact that except for 1 or 2 exceptions, you have one person doing all the writing, Russell T Davies, which I'm not saying he's not a good writer, but as a writer myself, I know that especially when you're dealing with episodic television, you want a writer's room. You want other people to give you feedback and not just to say, well, that idea works. This idea is not that good. Just having that dynamic banter amongst your writers, you're going to come up with better stuff. In a situation like Doctor Who, hearing the comment, I'm writing all the scripts for season 2, which is what Russell T Davies said. He says, I've got 4 of the scripts written already, is a red flag for me. Probably wouldn't have been a red flag for most other people, but for me, it is.
And not only that, but you have people that remind you, like I've watched Supernatural at conventions, like there will be makeup people that remind the writers of something that happened back in season 5 because they went on 15 seasons. It's like, don't forget about that this happened. So you'll have those people that can remind you, and so something doesn't get lost or could add to the story.
Now, I don't believe that this has anything to do, and I don't know if anyone's even thinking about this. As I was sitting here thinking about why this might be the case, and this was something that popped into my head, and I was like, no, this can't possibly be it, but I'm just going to mention it anyway. Of course, there has been this tradition, no American writers in Doctor Who. And I don't think, I don't see why there would be any good reason for Russell T Davies to take the scripts onto himself just so that he wouldn't have to have a writer's room, just so that he didn't have to say no American writers in the writer's room, just so he'd have to defend.
Can you imagine what Jordan Peele could do with Doctor Who? Oh,
Yeah, Jordan Peele, or we talked about the Joe Hill issue and what he could do. But, and again, let me just emphasize, yes, I know I'm talking about it now, but I don't believe that he's holding off and the BBC is preventing him from doing a writer's room just so that Disney doesn't force them into taking on American writers. Because if they do have a writer's room, yeah, I'm sure Disney might have some ideas of some people they want to put in there. And if for whatever reason you feel like you have to protect Doctor Who from Disney, what the heck's going on here?
and Americans.
And those
We can't have those Yanks doing anything to our doctor.
Yeah. If that's the case, then keep doing BBC money. Don't do anything with Disney Plus if you feel like they're going to come in and interfere with a bunch of stuff. But I feel like this is, again, indicative of a lot of issues that we're having with television and movies, not just in the geek side of things, but just all over the place, is I feel in a huge way that Hollywood is having to relearn how to do all this stuff because the rules are changing. And one of the big rules that has been changing and is changing even more is this idea that Hollywood and New York are the only two places where you're making television and movies in. Or
Atlanta.
Yeah, Atlanta now.
Yeah, that's...
And of course,
Canada.
And Canada and New Zealand. And also in Arizona, where Netflix just built a movie studio.
Yep.
And a massive soundstage is currently being planned and built in Nashville, Tennessee. Like a massive one.
I was going to say, for that. Okay.
Yeah.
Unless they're tearing a bunch of stuff down.
Not downtown Nashville, but in that area. But it's going to be one of the biggest ones in the Northern Hemisphere.
Wow. Okay.
So the rules are changing. The rules are changing in a big way. And a lot of people are trying to figure all of that out right now. And that's where the questions are coming in, is what does all of this begin to look like? Because what are movie theaters going to start looking like? Is there a future movie theaters? Are people going to go in and watch movies? And then they're about ready to write them off. And then you get a big movie like I suspect that Deadpool and Wolverine's going to be, where they have a really successful movie and then they back off from the let's kill all the theaters because they're dying anyway. But the rules are changing. I mean, to the degree that Disney's coming back to San Diego Comic-Con, which, again, here's another rule that's changing. They're thinking about taking Comic-Con out of San Diego.
Wow.
So they might move it somewhere else. I mean, that's a possibility. But the rules are changing, but what stays the same is story. What makes a good story always has made a good story. And those are the rules you have to look at. That ultimately, regardless of what the form and the function of movies and television look like, or whatever replaces them, whatever entertainment, the story is king. And until the Hollywood, New York contingency, the old school, until they figure that out, I don't see how they're going to pull out of this tailspin that they're in. Even though you want to pretend that the writer is the lowest rung in the totem pole, story is what's going to put money back in your pockets. I don't know how long it's going to take for them to figure that out. I don't know what this week's Comic-Con is going to look like, but it is the beginning of this new, I feel, basically this is like the next iteration, the next evolution of entertainment. I think it's really going to start with this Comic-Con, and where it goes from there, I guess we'll see.
We shall see.
And with that said, we come to the end of episode 221. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for the latest in geek news and views with the Geek Watch podcast. For Mandy Petry, this is Brian Hatcher, reminding all the Geek Watchers out there, we're all geeky about something. Be proud of yours. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Geek Watch podcast. If you enjoyed this program, don't forget to like and subscribe on your preferred platform and share this podcast on your social media. For links to all the ways you can listen to the Geek Watch podcast, as well as leave comments and suggestions, visit our website at geekwatch.net. The Geek Watch podcast is a Hanging J production.